So today, we're digging into Congressman Tom Emmer's perspective on the recent turmoil in Minneapolis. We're looking at a single interview where he lays out a pretty clear argument for who he believes is responsible. Let's get right into it and unpack his claims and the evidence he uses to back them up.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the unrest itself, what kicked everything off. Then we'll dive into who the congressman is actually blaming for the violence. From there, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of his specific criticisms of local leaders and see how he links all of this to the city's public schools. To finish, we'll zoom out and look at his bigger picture diagnosis of Minnesota's political divide. Okay, so what kicked all of this off? The whole discussion centers around a series of protests in Minneapolis. According to the source, these demonstrations really fired up after a shooting that involved U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or as you probably know them, ICE. Now, here's a detail that Congressman Emmer really zeroes in on. It's a protest chant. Save a life, kill ICE. For him, this isn't just a slogan. He presents it as key evidence that these demonstrations were anything but peaceful. And things apparently got so heated that the federal government decided it had to step in. The source says they ended up sending another 1,000 Border Patrol agents to Minneapolis just to deal with the situation. Okay, so things are tense. But the congressman doesn't just stop at describing the events. Nope, he points a finger directly. He's very clear about assigning blame for the violence. This all boils down to one key question from the interview that really shapes his entire argument. Who is fomenting all of this violence? And for him, the answer is, well, it's not complicated at all. And wow, it's not just one or two people. We're talking about a pretty long list here. He points the finger at Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Mary Moriarty, Mayor Jacob Fry, the Minneapolis Teachers Union, and even the state's biggest newspaper, the Star Tribune. All right, so he's named names. But what's the reasoning behind it? Let's break down the specific criticisms he has for each of these leaders and institutions. The language he uses, it's pretty sharp. For Mayor Jacob Fry, he's called a boy-toy mayor, basically saying he's not mature enough for the job, and that he's running in front of a violent mob. And then for Governor Tim Walz, the comparison gets historical. He's compared to Jefferson Davis, which frames the governor as being at war with the federal government. Now, when it comes to the prosecutor, Mary Moriarty, the critique gets really specific. It's all about a past case. The congressman alleges she withheld evidence that would have helped the defendant, which ultimately led to the charges being dropped. The suggestion here is that this past action casts doubt on her credibility now. But, maybe the most serious accusation of all is the one he aims at the Star Tribune newspaper. The source claims that by publishing the names and pictures of officers, the paper is literally trying to get ICE officers killed. And then the argument takes a turn. The congressman connects all this political turmoil directly to what's happening in Minneapolis public schools. So how does he build that bridge? Well, the link he makes starts with a decision from the teachers union. Because of the unrest, they announced that students could switch to virtual learning. Congressman Emmer presents this not as just a safety measure, but as a symptom of much, much deeper problems in the school district. And to back this up, he throws out a number. A big one. 20%. He claims that's how many students Minneapolis public schools have lost in just the last 5 years. And apparently, that trend isn't slowing down. The source says they're on track to lose another 6,000 students in the coming year. And again, he ties this decline directly back to policies like that shift to virtual learning. Okay, so for the final piece of the puzzle, let's pull back and look at the big picture, his diagnosis of Minnesota's entire political landscape, which he presents as the root cause of, well, all of this. So why does Mayor Fry act the way he does, according to the congressman? It's simple. He's just following his voters. The argument is that his electorate is so way to the left that he's basically being led by a violent mob instead of actually leading the city. And to make the case that the whole state is divided, the source brings up Governor Walz's last election. Take a look at these numbers. Even though he won, he only carried 13 out of 87 counties. The point being made here is that this paints a picture of a massive split between the state's urban centers and its more rural areas. So when you put it all together, the protests, the blame game with leaders, the schools losing students, and this election data, you get a very specific narrative. And it really leaves you with a big question. Does this view accurately capture the political reality in Minnesota, or is it a picture painted to make a very particular point?